I wasn't looking for a dog. I didn't want one, didn't need one. And if you'd asked me last month, I would have said pets are too much trouble. But that was before I met him. It was late, just past midnight, and I was driving home along Black Hollow Road. It's the kind of road where the trees lean in over you, like they're eavesdropping. My headlights kept catching flashes of movement between the trunks. Rabbits, probably. That's what I told myself. Then something darted out into the beam. I slammed the brakes. A black dog stood in the middle of the road. Not a mutt, not exactly. His coat was too perfect, too smooth. I swear the light didn't just reflect in his eyes. It burned. We stared at each other for what felt like minutes. I rolled my window down and said, "You okay, buddy?" He walked toward the car. Not ran, not trotted. Walked, slow, deliberate, like he was making sure I could see him coming. I should have just kept driving. I should have locked the doors. Instead, I opened the passenger side and said, "Come on in." He did. No hesitation. No sniffing the seat first. He hopped in like he'd been riding with me for years. He didn't make a sound all the way back to my place. The first weird thing happened before I even got him inside. I parked, opened my door, and stepped out. When I turned to open the passenger side, he was already sitting on my porch. My porch is a good 30 feet from where I parked. I didn't see him get out. I didn't hear him move. He was just there, waiting. Fast little guy, huh? I joked, trying to cover up the prickling feeling on the back of my neck. Inside, I grabbed an old blanket for him to sleep on. No collar, no tags. I figured maybe he was lost. I'd put up some posts online in the morning. But when I set the blanket down, he just stood there, watching me. Not wagging his tail, not sniffing around. Just watching. That night I woke up around 3 a.m. to a sound. A soft, rhythmic tapping. I lay there for a second, heart pounding, until I realized it was nails. Dog nails. Clicking against the hardwood floor. I turned my head toward the doorway. He was sitting there. Still. Silent now. I muttered, "You okay, buddy?" That's when he tilted his head. Not in that cute, curious way dogs do. More like he was mimicking me, studying me. In the morning, I checked the kitchen. The food I'd put in a bowl for him was untouched. The water, too. I thought maybe he was just nervous. New environment and all. But then, later that day, I caught him standing in the hallway, staring at the wall. Not sniffing it, not pawing, just staring. I walked up behind him and snapped my fingers to get his attention. He didn't react. Not until I touched his back. Then, he turned his head, slowly, and looked right at me. That night, he slept in my bedroom. Not on the floor, not at the foot of the bed. He sat at the side, right by my head, and watched me. I could feel his breath on my cheek. I should have gotten rid of him then. But something about the way he looked at me made it impossible to tell him no. It wasn't love. It wasn't trust. It was like I was already his. The second night was worse. I woke again around 3 a.m. Same tapping sound as before. Dog nails. Slow. Steady. I sat up, expecting to see him in the doorway again. But the doorway was empty. The sound was coming from the hallway. Click, click, click. It moved away from me, down toward the living room. I figured maybe he was finally exploring. I grabbed my phone for light and followed the sound. When I reached the end of the hall, he wasn't there, but the sound was click, click, click. It was coming from the kitchen now. I rounded the corner. Nothing. Just darkness. I flicked the light on, and there he was, sitting perfectly still in the middle of the room, eyes locked on me. The clicking stopped. By morning, I had convinced myself it was just my brain playing tricks. Maybe I'd heard the sound of the house settling, or the heating system. But when I went outside to get the mail, Mrs. Clark, my neighbor, waved me over. She's lived next door for 20 years, and she's the kind of person who notices everything. You get a new dog? She asked. Yeah. Found him on Black Hollow Road the other night. Her smile vanished. You shouldn't keep him. I laughed, thinking she was joking. Why not? She leaned in, voice dropping. Because I heard it again last night. Heard what? She didn't answer. Just gave me this pitying look and walked back inside. That night, I tried locking him in the kitchen while I slept. He didn't bark, didn't whine. I thought it worked. Until I woke at exactly 3:07 a.m. He was sitting by my bed. The kitchen door was still closed. I didn't sleep again that night. The dream started the next week. Always the same. I'm in the woods. It's pitch black except for a faint glow ahead. I follow it, thinking it's a flashlight. But it's two eyes. Yellow, burning eyes. Something huge moves between the trees. Sometimes I hear panting. Not happy dog panting, but ragged, wet breathing, like something's running just behind me. When I wake, my chest hurts, like I've been running for hours. On the fifth night, the whispers started. I was lying in bed, trying not to think about the dream I'd just had, when I heard a voice. Low, almost too soft to catch, coming from the hallway. I thought maybe it was the TV. I dozed off to static noise sometimes, but no, it was words. I couldn't make them out, but they had rhythm, like chanting. I sat up, listening. The dog was sitting in the doorway, head tilted, mouth closed. The whispering didn't stop. It's weird what you convince yourself to ignore. I told myself I was just stressed, that maybe I'd been working too much, that maybe I'd been watching too many horror movies before bed. But deep down, I knew. It wasn't the house making those sounds. It was him. A week after I found him, I started trying to figure out where he came from. I posted pictures online, Facebook groups, lost pet pages, even printed flyers and left them at the gas station. Not one reply. Not even a, "He looks like my cousin's dog." It was like he'd never existed until that night on Black Hollow Road. I work from home, so I had time to watch him during the day. Most dogs I've known sleep a lot. Not him. He'd just sit in the corner, staring at the wall, eyes unblinking. Sometimes I'd catch him facing a completely blank spot. Not toward the window, not toward me. Just nothing. Like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. By the end of that week, I gave up on finding an owner. That's when I made my next mistake. I mentioned him to Frank, the guy who runs the bait shop in town. Frank's in his 60s, lived here all his life, knows every weird story about the area. When I described the dog, big, black, eyes that catch the light, Frank went pale. "You found him on Black Hollow Road?" "Yeah." Frank shook his head. "That's the Hollow Hound. Folks around here don't talk about it much anymore." I thought he was messing with me, but he leaned across the counter, lowering his voice like he was telling me a secret. "They say it shows up before bad things happen. Death, accidents, disappearances. Doesn't matter who you are. If you see it, it's already too late." I laughed. Couldn't help it, but Frank didn't. "You think I'm joking? My uncle saw it. Week later, they found him in the creek. No one could explain how he got there." I tried to shake it off on the drive home, but his words stuck with me. Especially when I walked in the door and saw the dog sitting in the exact same spot I'd left him that morning. No greeting. No movement. Just those eyes, following me. That night, I had the worst dream yet. I was back in the woods, but this time, I could hear someone calling my name. Not a scream, not a shout. A calm, steady voice. Familiar somehow. I followed it deeper into the trees until I saw the dog, sitting perfectly still between two dead oaks. He opened his mouth, and my mother's voice came out. "Come here. I've missed you." I woke up gasping, heart hammering in my chest. When I went to the bathroom to splash water on my face, I noticed something in the mirror. 3 long scratches down my left arm, not bleeding much, but fresh. I had no idea how they got there, and the dog was sitting in the hallway outside the bathroom, watching. The next morning, Mrs. Clark didn't come out to get her mail. Her blinds were closed. By that evening, the sheriff's car was in her driveway. She was gone. No one saw her leave. No one ever saw her again. After Mrs. Clark disappeared, I stopped sleeping. Not just because of the dreams, although they were getting worse, but because I kept hearing things at night. At first, it was the clicking of nails again. Then, other sounds. Wet, tearing noises. Heavy breathing. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed my phone, crept downstairs, and followed the sound into the kitchen. The dog was there. His head was bent low over something on the floor. I flicked the flashlight on. It was a rabbit, or what was left of one. Its body was torn open, fur matted with blood, ribs poking through. The dog looked up at me, muzzle red. Not guilty, not scared. Just waiting to see what I'd do. I backed out of the room, locked myself in my bedroom, and tried not to throw up. The next night, it was worse. I found a dead raccoon on the porch. The night after that, a deer. Its neck was twisted at an impossible angle. I stopped checking after dark. But I couldn't avoid it in the mornings. Every day something new would be waiting on the steps. And then came the night I'll never forget. It was storming, rain hammering against the windows. I was on the couch, pretending to watch TV, when I heard the sliding glass door to the backyard open. I never heard it unlock. The dog walked in. He wasn't wet, not even a drop. He padded across the carpet, something clamped between his jaws. When he dropped it at my feet, my stomach turned to ice. It was a human hand. I stumbled backward, gagging, but he just sat there, tail thumping once against the floor, like he'd brought me a gift. I grabbed my keys and bolted for the front door. Didn't even put on shoes. I drove for hours, rain blurring the road, until I pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour diner 2 towns over. I sat there, shaking, wondering what the hell I was supposed to do. Call the cops? Tell them my dog was bringing me human remains? They'd think I'd lost my mind. Eventually, I forced myself to go home. When I pulled into the driveway, the porch light flicked on. The dog was sitting there, waiting. The hand was gone. The next day, I drove him deep into the woods, far past Black Hollow Road, into a part of the forest so thick the sunlight barely reached the ground. I left him there. Didn't look back. By the time I got home, he was sitting on my porch again. That night, the dream changed. I wasn't just running in the woods anymore. I was chasing something. My body felt heavy, my vision low to the ground. I could smell blood, sharp and metallic, and I wanted it. When I caught up to whatever I was chasing, I didn't see its face. I only remember the sound it made when I bit down. I woke up with dirt under my nails. It's not just him anymore. It's me. The first time I noticed was in the mirror. I was brushing my teeth when I caught my reflection moving just a fraction too slowly. Like a bad video call, slightly out of sync. I spat the toothpaste out, leaned closer. My pupils looked wrong. Not just dilated, but longer, like an animal's. I told myself it was the lighting, but when I blinked, I could see my eyes reflecting light from the bathroom bulb, the same way his did. The whispers had been getting louder. They weren't just in the hall anymore. They were everywhere, in the kitchen, in the yard, even in my dreams. Sometimes I could make out words. Hunger, run, take. Other times it was just sounds, growls buried inside human voices. 3 nights ago, I woke to find the dog at the side of my bed again. But this time, he spoke. Not a bark, not a growl. Words. Come with me. It wasn't his voice. It was my mother's, exactly like I'd heard in the dream weeks before. She's been dead for 12 years. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The dog turned, walked out of the room, and without even thinking, I followed. He led me into the backyard. The grass was cold and wet under my bare feet. The air smelled sharp, metallic. That's when I saw them, two shapes standing at the tree line. At first I thought they were people, but when my eyes adjusted, I saw they were dogs. Black, like him. Eyes glowing faintly in the dark. They watched us without moving. The dog looked back at me, and for the first time since I'd met him, his mouth opened in something like a smile. The next morning, I woke up in bed. No idea how I got there, but my feet were muddy, my fingernails were caked with dirt, and there was blood under them. The changes came faster after that. Food didn't taste right unless it was raw. I could hear things from impossible distances. Conversations in houses down the street, the rustle of mice in the walls, and the dreams weren't dreams anymore. They were memories of running on all fours through the woods, tearing into flesh with teeth that weren't human. 2 nights ago, the dog brought me something again. Not dead this time. A man. He was alive, but barely. Bleeding. Eyes wide. Mouth gagged with his own shirt. The dog dropped him at my feet like he was waiting for me to finish what he'd started. I told myself I wouldn't. I told myself I'd help him. But the smell of blood was too strong. And when I came to, I was alone. My mouth was wet. If you're hearing this, I'm already farther down the road than I can turn back. I told myself there had to be a rule. Every story has one, even the ones that end badly. Vampires have sunlight. Ghosts have names. Curses have conditions. What was mine? I went through every possibility. Salt lines, iron nails, prayers whispered through clenched teeth while the house breathed around me. He stepped across salt like it was dust. Iron didn't matter. Prayer made the whispers laugh. And the name, God, I thought I was clever with the name. I waited until dusk, waited until his eyes were 2 coins punched through the dark and said steady and loud, "Your name is nothing. Do you hear me? You are nothing. Nothing has no power here." He cocked his head, almost amused. Then a voice came from his black mouth. The exact cadence of my mother, patient and tired, the way she sounded when I told a childish lie. "Don't do that," she said gently. "It only binds you tighter." The house seemed to lean in. The shadows did a quiet trick with the corners, lengthening. Somewhere in the hall, a clock I didn't own ticked toward 3:07 a.m., even though it was barely past 7 in the evening. I realized I had been measuring my life in the distance between now and that minute. "Fine," I told him. "Let's finish this somewhere it started." I grabbed a shovel and a can of gasoline. Not because I thought either would help, because I needed my hands full of something that wasn't fear. When I opened the front door, the night outside was already there waiting, like it had been listening against the frame. The dog padded out past me, polite as ever, and sat by the car like he'd called shotgun. I didn't lock the house. I didn't expect to come back. Black Hollow Road is different at night. In daylight, it's just a bad stretch of pavement with a reputation the locals pretend not to remember. At night, the trees shoulder closer, and the sky forgets it's supposed to be above you. Sound gets strange. Crickets sing without body. Wind moves without air. I drove with the windows down because I needed to hear if the nails started clicking in the back seat. But there was no sound at all. No engine hum. No tires on asphalt. Until I pulled over at the turnout, where I met him the first time. The dog hopped out before I cut the lights. He trotted to the edge of the ditch and stood, not looking back. If he had wagged, it might have broken me. He didn't. "Here?" I asked. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The woods beyond the ditch breathed out in a slow, cold exhale. Shapes gathered between the trunks, only as real as it took for my brain to understand how many there were. eyes like dew. Dozens, and then too many to count. The sound in the trees was not a growl, not yet. It was expectation. I climbed down with the shovel. The ground gave under my feet like a sleeping animal's ribs. "Frank said you show up before bad things," I said, more to myself than to anything listening. "What happens if the bad thing already happened?" The dog turned finally and looked at me, and for the first time since I brought him home, I understood something plain. He wasn't my omen. I was his. I started to dig. I didn't know what I was digging for. A hole big enough to bury a leash I never owned? A grave for the part of me that still believed I could leave this road without a handler? The shovel threw dull glances of moonlight into the trees. The earth came up in wet, dark breaths. Roots snagged like fingers. The deeper I went, the stronger a smell rose with the dirt. Not rot. Cold iron, wet stone, and underneath that, the metallic sliver of blood the mind only recognizes when it wants more. When the blade clanged against something solid, I thought it was rock. I cleared the soil away with my hands, and my fingernails found the edge of a circle. Stone, yes, but worked, not natural. A ring of old, flat pieces laid so deep the forest had almost forgotten them, slick with a skin of black moss. In the center, a depression not wide enough for a person, not the right shape for a grave. More like a bowl. The dog sat on the far side of that circle and waited. The other eyes in the trees didn't blink. "You want me to feed it?" I said. The dog opened his mouth, let a voice seep out that was not my mother's and not anyone I knew. It was the voice of a place that would never be a house. "We take what is given." I laughed then. It sounded wrong, like I'd borrowed someone's voice and hadn't learned to steer it. "No," I said, almost pleasantly. "I don't give you anyone else." "We take what is given," the trees said this time, the phrase running from trunk to trunk as if bark had a throat. A hand for a hand. A road for a road. A name for a name. "Then take me," I said. It surprised me less than it should have. Maybe because the truth had been slouching toward me for weeks, tail thumping, patient as a house pet. The dog tilted his head, curiosity, approval, maybe both. "Say it," he told me. And it was definitely my mother this time, the way she sounded when she made me apologize as a kid. Not cruel, but insisting I learn by doing. I stepped into the stone ring. The cold climbed my calves like water. Every hair on my arms lifted. "I give myself," I said. Then, because it felt like a lock that needed more than one key, "I take myself." It was a stupid sentence. It was the exact right one. The circle breathed. The depression in the middle filled with something that wasn't liquid and wasn't air. It was the feeling of a mouth opening. Behind me, the pack came closer. The air thickened with the warm, barnyard stink of coat and flesh. One by one, the glowing eyes lowered to my height. "Still hungry?" I asked the dog quietly. "Or is it my turn?" He didn't answer in words. He moved forward and put his forehead against my shin, the way a good dog will when you've had a bad day. It was almost kind. Then everything broke open. I need you to understand what happened next in the simple way it felt, because the complicated version would sound like bragging or madness. Bones make different choices when they're allowed. Joints discover that hinges can be doors. Teeth remember they are not just decoration. The body invents a new grammar for old verbs: run, take, eat, become. I didn't fall to the ground so much as I chose it. My hands forgot how to be hands and learned a faster way to agree with the dirt. The whole forest shifted half a degree to make space for me. My ears turned their faces to the night and discovered that sound has depth. The creak of sap in a tree 3 hills over. The high wire shriek of a bat pulling a curve in the dark. A mouse praying to nothing in particular in the grass a field away. And under all of it, like a bass line you didn't know the song needed until it was there. Hearts. Beating. Everywhere. You want to know if it hurt. It did, but not the way you think. Pain was an old tool used for a new job. It opened things. It raised new rooms. When it was finished, I stood inside my skin like a new house, walls still drying. The dog, my dog, the dog, stood before me, and we regarded each other without the lie of words. He didn't look bigger. I looked smaller in the right way. A leaf fell somewhere, and we all heard it. "Show me," I said, and this time I didn't say it with a mouth. We ran. We were so quiet the night had to listen hard to keep from losing us. The town was not built for what came down out of the forest. You always imagine the apocalypse as sirens, but it was simple. Lights in kitchen windows, a backyard gate left unlatched, a teenager smoking behind the garage, not thinking about anything beyond the flame of the lighter cupped in his hand. We moved among all that as if it were a museum of the species we had been yesterday. It didn't feel like hunger at first. It felt like arithmetic. This plus this equals that. Fence plus shadow equals chance. Scent plus wind equals direction. Fear plus distance equals nothing at all, because fear without something to throw it against is only weather. You want details? I won't give you the ones that stick in your throat. Not because I'm kind, because the point isn't how. It's that I learned there are two kinds of taking. The kind that fills you, and the kind that makes room. We took both. Somewhere during all of it, I remembered the man the dog dropped at my feet days ago. I remembered believing I could be the sort of person who saves someone. I felt shame for a second, and then I watched that shame walk away into the trees, and I let it go. The pack never slowed. By the time the sky yawned in the east, quiet as an animal waking, the town had stories it would tell itself for years. Wild dogs, a cult, a ghastly hallucination. Whatever makes it hurt less. We returned to Black Hollow Road at dawn. The ring of stones was a dark coin in the ground, flipped to tails. The pack moved among the trees like a thought you've almost had. The dog sat. I sat across from him, how I had when I still owned furniture. "Is that it?" I asked. "Am I done being me now?" He lifted his head. A bird called and stopped mid-note, like it remembered another appointment. "What you are isn't the point," he said. And I didn't even notice the lips moving, because the words were not a thing that needed lips anymore. "What you do is." I thought about Mrs. Clark's closed blinds. I thought about Frank telling me a story with his hands on the counter, knuckles pale, and how one day someone would realize he hadn't opened the bait shop in a while. I thought about my house, my old house, sitting with its doors unlocked, and its salt lines scuffed by nothing at all. I thought about the first night, my high beams catching two eyes in the road, and the clean, easy click of the passenger door lock. "You picked me," I said. He shook his head. "You opened the door," which is worse, which is honest. A car turned from the highway onto Black Hollow Road. Tires whispered past dead leaves. A shape inside the cab bent toward the windshield, eyes trying to make sense of the trees closing in. The dog looked at me like you look at someone you love when it's time to teach them how to do the thing you both already know they can do. "Go," he said. I stepped up onto the shoulder. The asphalt was still cold with night. I stood where the road narrowed and the oaks leaned, where the world tries to tell a driver to slow down. I let my eyes be two lanterns in a place that does not want light. The car braked, the engine cut, a window rolled down. "You okay, buddy?" a voice asked, almost exactly the way I'd said it. Kind, doomed by kindness. It would be easy to tell you I thought about giving him a chance. It would be easier to pretend I didn't enjoy the part after. But you already know both of those things are true. Later, when the pack finished, when the sun cleared the trees and the day remembered itself, I walked to the ring again and stood at its rim, half in shadow, half in what was left of morning. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now you make it easy," the dog said. "Now you choose who doesn't have to learn it the hard way." I didn't understand. He leaned forward and sniffed my hand. "Old friend, new priest." "You tell a story," he said. So here I am, telling it. First person, plain as I can. No extra blood, because the truth has enough of that, and you can smell it a little in the vowels anyway. If you wanted a warning, you got one. If you wanted absolution, you already opened a door I can't close for you. Maybe you're watching this alone, lights off, the way I used to do when I still believed stories were a place you could visit and then leave. Maybe you're hearing something in your hallway you'll call the house settling. Maybe you've got a dog asleep at your feet, and you're telling yourself what I told myself, that every weird thing has an explanation, that the animal you feed is the one you get to keep. Remember the rules that weren't rules. Salt won't help. Iron won't help. Names bind the wrong thing. What you do is the point. If you see two eyes on a black road and they look like coins punched through the night, keep driving. If the passenger door unlocks all by itself, don't say, "Come on in." And if you already did, if he's already sitting very still in the corner while this video bleeds toward the end, then listen closely. Do you hear it? Click, click, click. Not the hallway. The moment between now and what happens after. I can't help you, but I can tell you the truth no one told me. It was never the dog. It's the part of you that stands up to meet him. That's the end I hope you enjoyed. Like, subscribe, and tell me what would you do in this situation in the comments. See you soon, and have a scary night.